In this video, we have more information on the entity that will be taking over the RCID, more specifically, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. We're going to break it down, analyze it, talk about it with much, much more up next on this episode of OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. We have a real meaty show for you today. We're talking all about this new oversight board that's replacing Reedy Creek. We're going to break that down. We got some layoff news. We got a ton of stuff. So let's, without further ado, dive into our festivities. I want to introduce my producer, Mr. Vash Sky, host of Freshly Squeezed. Welcome back, Dre.
Hey. I am happy to be back. This is a topic that's, like I said, it's pretty meaty, and we've got some other topics in store for you as well. But things are changing, and they're changing quick. You better, grab on, because OG, you have that track switch drop right there.
Oh, I do. I absolutely. You better buckle up because.
Oh no! I must have hit that track switch.
the track switch has been hit. We're going on a wild ride, so hopefully we do it justice here. But if you guys want to follow me, you can go do so right down there at Vash Sky. Just go ahead and type that in, and it should pop up for, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy has said many times in the past, for all the
robust
discussion right there. And if you guys want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Go 55, where we have some amazing shows, both in the works coming up and in production right now, including stuff from Orange Nerd and Orange Go 55, the original flavor, right? Citrus Corner, Story Geeks with Jay, and my own Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Do you have the, I love the Walt drop there.
Oh, yeah, I got that. Hold on, give me just a moment. I got that right here.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all is indeed OG55, so hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be really, really fun.
There we go. All right, let's dive right in. We're talking all about this new oversight district that's kind of taking over for the RCID. There's a lot of potential ramifications for the mouse, for Disney, Walt Disney World in particular. Dre, if you want to go ahead and set the table, we'll dive right in.
I will set the table. And listen, this is going to be it's going to be a little bit of a different show because it intertwines with politics so much, unfortunately. I hate going into this realm, but in order to be complete about our kind of coverage of the Mouse House, you got to do it. Mouse House doesn't exist in a vacuum. Sometimes it meets with the real world as well. So if we did this successfully, this will be on YouTube. If we didn't, it'll be on Rumble. So
there we go.
Prepare for that one, guys. But
apologize for not being the ally that you needed me to be.
There you go. Perfect. It's perfect. So let's begin by talking about the RCID, or now that it's named the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. So if you would share my screen, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gee. This comes from the Hollywood Reporter. Disney loses control of Special District to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The governor on Monday named 5 new members to the district's governing body. Quote, there's a new sheriff in town. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis assumed control of the board that oversees development at Walt Disney World, seizing leverage over the state's largest employer and retaliating against the entertainment giant for opposing the so-called don't say gay law. Let's get off. Let's correct the record here for just 1 second. The RCID was always a state-controlled and created entity. Now, they didn't exercise much of their control because it was a mutual beneficial relationship, right? It was like, hey, you guys do your own thing. You bring all the tourists down, and we as a state will benefit from that investment, right? It always kind of worked. And then Disney decided to do some stuff that was maybe they were kind of leveraging their power that they felt they had over the state in ways that the state necessarily didn't agree with. So Obviously, that brought up a response, and the response was, that little district that you had since 1967, maybe the terms might change there. And it's interesting, too. We'll get into this a little bit, but originally, I remember Ron DeSantis talking about eliminating the district completely. Now, I didn't feel that was actually going to happen. OG, I think we were in agreement there. We were kind of like, not so much. But there were a lot of people... A little heavy-handed, right? But there were a lot of people who felt that, well, maybe that should happen. And now that Ron DeSantis has kind of made that promise, expected it to happen. So this is kind of interesting. We'll get into that as well. But a quote from DeSantis here. Today, the corporate kingdom finally comes to an end, he said Monday at a bill signing ceremony on Disney property. By the way, it was in the RCID fire station, which was really, really interesting. Quote, there's a new sheriff in town, and accountability will be the order of the day. We've kind of gone over what the new district actually, like what the new setup is. Here's a rundown here from, I think, the governor's office. And we kind of talked about that before and those kind of implications. But remember, I mean, we have to go over kind of the motivation, because the motivation is going to be the master of reason, not the other way around. And if we go over some of those motivations, then it might actually tell us what is yet to happen here. Because DeSantis, as you've heard OG probably this week, has said, hey, the board meets next week, which today is, Saturday, March 4th. I guess they meet the following week. And so the real kind of question is, okay, well, now that the board has been entrusted with this power, as it's been kind of preserved with this new, Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. Well, now they have a lot of powers that are completely out of Disney's hands. Right. Legal Mindset actually talks about having to negotiate with the RCID on some things as it relates to Celebration, for example, when it was still part of Disney's kind of entity there. And he recalls about how Disney executives would be in on calls. They would be included in emails. They would be included in person when talking to these board members. So the auspices or the illusion that Disney and RCD were completely separate, well, that was just thrown out the window. But they were kind of flaunting it, not thinking that it would ever come to this. And so we're all kind of asking ourselves, what is this board going to do? Because a lot of people they're kind of like, they're honing on the legislation, but they're not really talking about the implications of this legislation. I think it's a really interesting conversation. OG, your initial thoughts?
Well, yeah. And here's the thing. When Ron DeSantis said a few days ago, the board has its first meeting next week, and the press better, quote, buckle up, end quote.
Right.
In my opinion, and this is totally my opinion. This is very subjective, right? Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, that he's telling people, this board is going to give Disney a hard time from day one. It's not going to be, what's the word for it? This is not over by any stretch of the imagination. Next week, when they have that board, they're gonna really give it to the mouse, I think. And we'll see how that works out. This is a big look. Disney's the biggest employer in the state. It's a huge economic engine. This is a risky move. If they go too far, in my opinion, if they go too far in sort of really giving it to Disney,
right?
Well, number one, you're going to kind of scare Disney, de-incentivize them to invest more, number one. But number two, you don't want to also, from DeSantis's point of view, take it to a point where you lose the public. Because right now, the public's kind of on his side.
Yes.
They feel Disney
especially as released in Florida.
Right. In Florida, the public is on his side. But if he oversteps and it gets out that they're really just kind of nitpicking Disney and just kind of browbeating, kind of haranguing them over every little detail, just to do it because they're woke, I think that's gonna backfire a little bit on them. So there's got to be they gotta have some self-control here with this. And the buckle up comment makes me think I don't know, but that's just my viewpoint, and it could be totally wrong.
Well, and look, okay. There are constituents who work at Disney who would, constituents of Ron DeSantis himself, but like, supporters of Ron DeSantis who, aren't necessarily all gung-ho about big, massive changes either. And so you have to kind of keep that in line and so forth. Are there things that this board can institute that would actually make the operation at now this new district better? I think so. Like we've heard for years, and I'm talking when we did our initial video on this, talking about the woes of the fire department. I thought it was only going on for a couple of years. No. It's actually been going on for decades now, looking into it. Ever since like the late 80s, early 90s. The fire department, the RCID fire department. Anyway, yeah, the fire department that operates on RCID property. They've been talking about how, they haven't had the best vehicles, let's say, to actually report to calls. Have they been, lack of staff, let's say, because, the wages that they're given as part of this property are maybe not necessarily commensurate with some of the public sector. The union head of the RCID fire department has made many comments towards Disney saying, they're not necessarily the best shepherds of this whole thing. And that's why they kind of supported Ron DeSantis is doing that. And that's why he signed the bill at the fire station itself. Will their pay be increased and will their resources be increased? I think so. And that's a pretty easy thing that would get everybody, both left and right, on board with. You see what I'm saying, OG?
Well, and DeSantis is kind of known for he's like, okay, look what we're seeing here with the situation, right?
Sure.
It's Disney says something, right? He felt like a California company was interfering with Florida politics. So now we're going to punish them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, DeSantis works also in the opposite direction. Okay, so the fire department has been supporting me pretty much since minute one. He's going to scratch their back for sure. And it's like you said, it's a no-lose situation. You're going to raise the wages of these firemen. I mean, who even the left can't argue with that, right?
No, I know. Exactly.
It's going to happen,
And there have been talks about their relationship with the surrounding sheriff's department or law enforcement, how I guess they had like a $10 million deal between the RCID and their services. But that's not commensurate with the amount of work they actually do. Some people actually pegged it as high as 22 million. Will those be increased? I think they will. And maybe some roads and so forth that lead to the RCID, maybe taxed directly. There are some implications here, just like right off the bat. But I would agree with you. I would I wouldn't lean too much into it. But here's the problem, right? Motivation, master of reason. That reasoning is fine. But if DeSantis is serious about running in 2022 against 45, who has already said that he is going to run, he's already announced that even before this, well, then he really has to kind of stand out from the pack. Now, a lot of people might think and see this RCID issue as dead, but it might be just beginning, and that's kind of what worries me, both for Disney, but also, for DeSantis supporters. You might want to start looking at this as well, because this is going to be quite interesting how this develops. It's interesting. If you could share my screen here just one more time. If you look at the polls, oh, that's really small. Okay. If you look at the polls as it relates to this kind of presidential race so far, from January to about February 15th, 16th, you can see this kind of trend line where 45 has led, let's say. But you can see where DeSantis has kind of trailed behind him. Now, this kind of thing has fluctuated, but looks like, as we get further from the events of the pandemic, DeSantis has become kind of irrelevant. It's like, how do you stand out on the national stage when now everybody's kind of doing what you're doing, that kind of thing, and everybody's kind of moving in different directions. And interestingly enough, after this kind of disaster in Palestine, Ohio, after 45 actually made that visit, well, his popularity exploded. And so if you're a DeSantis and you're looking to run, how do you really stand out? Do you continue to use Disney as a punching bag in order to do that? Because even people who have been supporting DeSantis before this are kind of seeing him as kind of, you kind of capitulated a little bit. And I'll play some audio to kind of express that here. So I'm going to play some audio from attorney Robert Barnes. If there's somebody to watch in this space, it's definitely him. But he makes some interesting points here, and that kind of could be informing what might happen here to Disney in the coming days. So let me just play this, and we'll get going.
And this is what we're seeing in so many different spaces. People willing to forego economic interest, self-interest, in order to propagate political interest, as we've seen with Disney. Now that bridges into the Disney DeSantis bill. So I took a little mini deep dive into that because a lot of people were asking about it. So when Disney originally fought the attempts to quit having public school teachers talk about with children, the net effect of it was Disney tried to fight back, called it the Don't Say Gay bill and all this other stuff. That led to attention being brought to the fact that Disney had a special tax district, which it had all this authority over, where Disney World is, meant to allow them to do accommodations and other things without any control or jurisdiction, but it basically gave them potentially huge tax benefits and let them sort of govern themselves. So the talk was they were going to revoke that improvement district, as it was called, and have them be treated like anybody else. And that's how it was initially pitched and presented. That did not happen. The bill that passed, basically the big difference with the bill is that now where Disney is located has the same special improvement district there, most of the same powers present, most of the same tax benefits present, most of the same borrowing privileges present. The only big difference is that the board that manages the district is no longer picked by Disney. It's now picked by Governor DeSantis. So that's, I think, an improvement definitely over where it was. It's just not quite what it was initially pitched as. So that's where most of the people that are that follow Disney closely have called it, mostly window dressing. And that's kind of true. The big material benefits, the monetary benefits, Disney still got to keep.
And a lot of people view that situation as such. Now, obviously, you could probably guess it, Barnes' political alignment a little bit right there. Right. He's not necessarily maybe pro-Disney like we are. Right. So when people were expecting something to happen and it didn't, that has raised some red flags with some people. But go ahead, OG.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. See, this is the thing. When people talk about, did Disney win? Did DeSantis win? Who won this? DeSantis absolutely won. He won the war, absolutely, But I think he won the war by a smaller margin than a lot of people, including myself, were like kind of expecting him to win by. Agreed. So I think Barnes is correct. I think that this was definitely one of the better case scenarios for Disney. Now, Is it something that ideally they would want? No, of course they want to go back to how it was before, but Disney, look, they're not really fighting this for a reason,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. I mean, that's why they stopped fighting. Now, could they have mounted a defense against this? That's really tricky, and some legal scholars have differed on that. But let's say they were inclined to. If all they are punished by, let's use the verbiage that some out there would like us to use. If all they're punished by is just, an increase in salary for the fire department, surrounding sheriff's offices, and a couple of taxes, whatever. It's, that's no issue. It's weak sauce. It's all going to come down to, first of all, who these board members are, and secondly, what their motivation might be. Are they going to get input by DeSantis saying, hey, people wanted me to go farther, I didn't. You got to step up and you got to do this for me. Because as we saw with the polls, slipping, and 45 is investing big money, apparently. in Oppo research on DeSantis, coming up with nicknames and so forth, like
Ron DeSantis.
Well, Ron DeSanctimonious, Ron DeSantis, Ron D-Establishment, and even Tiny D. It's very interesting. But 45's telling him, you run, you best not miss here. He's trying to prevent him from running at all, really. Because if he was really afraid of him, he'd hold all this back until he actually ran and took him off. He's trying to say, don't do this, and DeSantis is being told, you gotta run. And if he's motivated to, then Disney might be more at issue here. But go ahead, OG.
Well, and here's the thing, right? So if he runs, he's gonna want to make a name for himself against Trump, right? And so he's gonna theoretically maybe go hard against Disney, have his board really rake them over the coals. See, that's risky, like we talked about earlier on the show. If you go too hard with this, where Disney really can't do their job, right? Where they're denying, projects or whatever they can do with this, that can get kind of sticky for him, because then you look like you're really kneecapping Florida's largest employer. Yeah. And then the narrative, look, during the pandemic, DeSantis was seen as very pro-business, right? Open it up. We're open for business, yada, yada, yada.
Correct.
If you go too hard against Disney, you start to kind of get the opposite reputation as being a little anti-business, right? So there's a fine line he's got to walk here. He's got to set his name for himself if he's running for president. At the same time, he can't go too far though with his attacks on Disney, because then you look like you're just being vindictive, but two, you're kneecapping the Florida economy, the local economy. So.
You are, and there's a bunch of foremen, there's a bunch of construction workers, there's a bunch of people who maybe, well, let's say, vote DeSantis's way, who are expecting results as well. They're not expecting to have, to have their job market in terms of Disney development projects be kneecapped by the very district that he took over or whatever. So it's a really interesting thing. Also, too, this Bloomberg story, that's very interesting that information leaked. I think it's being done for a reason, but we have to, I think, go into who might be on this this new district governing board here.
Oh yeah,
and
that's important. I mean, we have to talk about that.
We have to. Okay. I can't read any of these guys' comments. So one of the people on the board, and we'll go over some more members as well. The media has kind of looked into their past, and one of those includes, I believe, a pastor, if I'm not mistaken, Ron Perry.
Yeah, he's a CEO of a evangelical organization.
Right. And he has said some things that are, let's say, shocking and frankly pretty, they're bad, and they're so bad I can't even read them here. Like I can't even, I don't even know if I can show them on the screen. If you want to find those comments, hey, just type in just Google this article, they'll tell you. And it's shocking to say the least, but this is kind of a good summation here about who's actually on this board. So I'll go ahead and read this, at least this portion here. So let me just see here. Historically, the Reedy Creek Board oversaw a fire department, water systems, roadways, and building inspections around the Disney theme parks, and could issue bonds and take on debt for long-term infrastructure programs. Yeah, that's been adjusted. Democratic lawmakers in Florida who opposed DeSantis' takeover of the board warned that a politically motivated body could wield that power over Disney. Yeah, fair. Quote, are we going to see board members vetoing projects that are considered to go against any governor? State Representative Rita Harris said during floor debate on the proposal. Quote, for instance, this is interesting, Walt Disney just changed Splash Mountain. They made it Tiana's Bayou, parentheses, adventure. What if the governor didn't like that? Would the board then be able to push a company into changing their business model just so that they don't misalign with them? It's interesting because some people, especially those of the Splash Mountain movement, Save Splash Mountain movement, have actually tried to forward the idea of DeSantis getting involved now that it's the it's the DeSantis district essentially, which is an interesting idea. But the board members themselves, in addition to Ron Perry, the person we were speaking of before, DeSantis also appointed to the board Martin Garcia, a Tampa lawyer whose private investment firm contributed $50,000 to the governor's 2022 election campaign, and Bridget Ziegler, a co-founder of the conservative organization Moms for Liberty and the wife of Christian Ziegler, the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida. Some other articles go into the fact that that one of these members is a Federalist Society member, which I'm not a fan of. DeSantis actually attended a Federalist Society event on Walt Disney World property relatively recently, actually, and you've got some people here who are definitely going to be motivated, and the question is how far will they go? This article alludes to it, and that kind of takes us into our next point here. Are they going to affect content decisions? That is a kind of a big question mark. Now, you have a lot of tabloids saying, "Oh my God, they're gonna, DeSantis is gonna change content at Disney and affect content at Disney through these different decisions here." Let me see if I can actually find it. Here you go. This is from the New York Mag. DeSantis promises Florida will control Disney's content. Right-wing board to clamp down on, quote, woke ideology in cartoons.
Well, that's false. I mean, I haven't been supportive of DeSantis on this Reedy Cree thing at all.
No,
but
you have not.
DeSantis has no control over Disney's cartoons. I mean, if he's going to control, now look, his board does have some control over what rides get made and stuff like that. They can approve or deny projects.
Correct.
So something like Splash Mountain, yeah, I mean, I could see that happening if this board decides that it's too woke. We're not going to approve it. Maybe it's too late in the process for that now, but I'm just saying hypothetically going forward, if there's a project like that this board deems as woke, they might deny it. They might say that we can't have this. Look, if you look at the makeup of the board, the Moms for Liberty, the evangelical guy,
Federalist Society guys,
right? This is not by accident. I mean, these people are picked for this position to mitigate the woke culture. This is designed to be a firewall for that. So yes, there will be, in my opinion, I think there will be some element of control as to what Disney will produce, So I in my opinion.
And and I'm unsure about that, to be quite honest with you. I don't see them, like, for example, levying a tax against the district, against the members, the people who occupy that district, being Disney, because of some movie that they want to produce. That's a little far, and that I think that would be challenged, because I think that now that's a sincere First Amendment violation right there, but. Could I see them, like, if they were to announce Tiana's Bayou Adventure, tomorrow, now that this bill's actually been signed into law and these more board members assigned, could I see them denying a project like that? Maybe.
Right.
However, I want to go ahead and provide the context for these comments, because some people are just like, they're just printing these comments out and then saying, "Oh, look, this is the smoking gun here." I don't think it's that simple. So I'll play the comments in context. This is during the Q&A portion of the press conference for the signing of this bill that enacted the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. So let's go over them. Let's hear them, and then we'll take a look.
So the question's about what were we looking for with this board? These are folks who have a variety of experience that I think all are pertinent. You got a lot of business experience because there's a lot of business issues. You're talking about this debt, making sure that that's retired properly, maybe even accelerating retiring the debt. So that's important. There's taxes involved. There's a bunch of stuff. We also have people that have experience in local government. This is ultimately a state agency that's running this, but a lot of the principles are the same in terms of how you manage that. And so we do have that. We also have people that very much want to see Disney be what Walt envisioned, which is what we all want to do. I mean, we're, honestly, in spite of all the stuff that's happened in the last couple of years, I've always been very proud of our parks. I've been proud of so many people that have been able to come to Florida over the years. I mean, it's almost like a rite of passage for people to be able to come down here. And I think a lot of families have had really great experiences for many times, but when you lose your way, you gotta have people that are going to tell you the truth. And so we hope that they can get back on. But I think all these board members very much would like to see the type of entertainment that all families can appreciate. But I do think the business acumen and the local government knowledge and the legal knowledge, we got people that are very smart in the law in this. There can be some different things. If they're eventually going down the road where they're negotiating with the counties to dissolve the state's role and just give it to the counties permanently, which, we would like to do at some point. We're only going to do that if there's no problems or no burdens placed on the taxpayers. But they have the ability to do that. So I think they've got great experience, and they're from, we do have some people from Central Florida. We've got people from other parts of Florida. So I think it's a really good mix.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, like there have been, you're right. There's been outlets that have ran with this saying he definitely wants to alter the content. Look, I think that that's definitely a thing. I do think it's a thing, in my opinion, where he brought it up for a reason. The board would like to see Disney go back to what they were. He's bringing it up for a reason. It's not by accident. He's a politician. I mean, his words, everything is very carefully crafted, as all politicians are. For him to bring that up and kind of throw that in there shows you there is a desire here to sort of maybe even indirectly intimidate Disney to sort of behave, right? I think but it's not definitive though. So when these outlets say he definitely said he's going to do that, he did not. To be fair to him, he did not say we're definitively doing it. He's sort of, in my opinion, giving Disney a warning, saying, "Look, you know what? Keep your head down, and we'll see," kind of thing.
And I will juxtapose this, by the way, with a story that recently came out on the other coast.
Yes,
didn't get nearly as much traction, even though it's much more affirmative than the comments made by DeSantis here.
It is.
It sounded to me, and look, maybe I'm biased as well. I'm not biased towards DeSantis, but I am kind of biased towards a kind of a more neutral position when it comes to this. Like, obviously, there are going to be changes with the RCID as it existed, right? But I don't think it's going to be as profound as people might think or expect, just because of the logistics associated with them and the kind of complexities associated with them. Like, that's kind of where my bias lies. It didn't sound like to me like it sounded like to me he was going over the background of these individuals and not necessarily what they were going to do. Because I think that's two different things right there, and I think that's why a lot of people read into it in one way, but ran with it quite hard. And I don't think that was necessarily called for. Is he alluding to the fact that maybe they're going to be taking their content into consideration? I think that would be an accurate statement. Whether or not they're going to actually do that, it's a really, really open question.
Yeah, and Disney's smart. DeSantis is in there. Look, he's going to be termed out as governor in just a few years. Or he might even leave earlier.
Or if he runs, and then
right?
He's out.
And he runs and he wins and he's president, he'll be out even sooner. So I don't think we're going to see any controversial sort of additions to the Walt Disney World Resort under this new board, at least while DeSantis is there. They're not going to announce another kind of Tiana thing right now under these conditions. I think anything that Disney is going to maybe put in here is going to be pretty safe, like, the Villain's Land or an area about Encanto or something like that. They're going to keep it pretty safe. So I don't think that necessarily they're going to run into this issue, but I do think that there is a desire by DeSantis and the board, though, to intervene in some way if it comes to that. Look, we've seen a lot of changes to things like Pirates of the Caribbean, where making it more PC, so to speak, where the pirates aren't chasing the women out of a track because they're attracted to them. They were chasing them because now they got breads under their arms, stuff like that. I think things like that. I think that you could see a DeSantis board saying, "Hey, you know what? We don't like that. We're not approving that." I really think that, but I don't know if Disney's going to do that while they're there. And
I would be generally unsupportive of that. Just like I would be unsupportive of it the other way, which we'll get into in a moment. But we've seen power by institutional players wielded against people for wrong, principles, let's say, in their opinion, right? And we've seen, for example, like bank accounts, like credit card companies, just denying bank accounts completely to people who are on the
naughty list.
On the naughty list, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And so this corrective force, and that's what it is, kind of mentality, I think, will increase on both sides. Unfortunately, it might have to, in order for people to understand that this would be mutually destructive. Mutually assured destruction. So it's a complex issue. I'm not supportive of it at all. I don't want this board influencing what content is being designed or being produced by Disney, because I wouldn't want it the other way either. Coming from other entities.
I have a quick question though. Would it be fair to say, when Disney made that press release, which they shouldn't have made, but when Disney had that press release about repealing the bill and all this stuff, and they went really aggressive. I mean, Universal didn't do any of that. None of the other parks did that, right? Disney went full bore on that. Yeah. And DeSantis came out and said, "Okay, well, for that, we're punishing you. We're gonna dissolve your district or whatever." And he made it very clear that that's why this is happening, right? Is it fair to say that he sort of set this ball in motion, though, for the government to sort of get involved with the content being made by this decision? Because now you started to get the ball rolling with, "Hey, we don't like what you said. Okay, now we don't like what you're making." Do you think he kind of got the ball rolling?
I don't think so. And the reason why I'll say that is because, well, even DeSantis has said, well, that was a minor thing. We're doing this for different reasons. We all know that was the pretext.
Right.
But even though the pretext is in question, and I know a lot of people are like, well, it was free speech and all that. Okay. This was a deal that was made under the auspices that Disney be wholly separate, basically, from all of Central Florida. And for that kind of separation in terms of taxes, local jurisdiction, local governing power, authority, all that, that you would create a city that would necessitate that power. Well, they didn't actually build that city. That left a hole, but they still leveraged that power in order to enrich themselves.
Right.
That had to be changed. And honestly, constitutionally, it's kind of up in debate whether that process could have occurred at all, even as it did back in 1967. Disney having that level of influence, and they exerted it over the state, not just recently, but over the decades, for years and years and years, almost 50 plus years, that needed to change. I don't think that is applicable towards anybody else's situation. I don't think it's, you look at the special district at Universal, if Comcast says something and go, well, we're just gonna remove that from you. I don't quite think that's how it can work or will work. But this was under DeSantis' purview because this was a state-created entity that wielded a lot of power for a lot of years. And even though the pretext is very uncomfortable, the result, I think, was it was inevitable that it would happen. It's unfortunate how it happened, but I don't think it'll happen again. But a lot of people are saying, ooh, well, he's done this at Disney. Will he do this to other entities as president? Which is an interesting idea.
Well, and he didn't he do something similar with now look, hey, full disclosure, I'm not into sports. I don't know anything about sports, but didn't he do something with the I think it's the Florida Stingrays or something? The sports team. I think Christina Pusha,
or right-hand lieutenant, his media spokesperson or whatever, has said that that wasn't because of the Rays' stances on those things, and I don't think it is either. I think there were problems with that kind of agreement between the Rays for that sports facility and so forth that DeSantis himself was uncomfortable with.
But don't you find it? Don't you find it a little bit uncomfortable too, though, that it's always like, we don't like what you're saying, but we're going to use this other reason both instances, because the Stingrays, I think they made a tweet he didn't like. Disney made a press release they didn't like. Both of these companies were being punished, and they're kind of saying, well, it's not for that reason. But it's like, it's a little coincidental, though, that all the companies that are saying the woke stuff that
it is.
But
here's the kind of difficulty. You have various demographics of the population as it exists in the United States that feel they're being mistreated by government actors and by institutional actors, and they feel that DeSantis is a correcting course on that. I don't like the idea of government having this much authority and this much power and wielding it in the ways that they are. At the same time, I'm sympathetic to the idea of this power be wielded in some manners for some things, because we're seeing it across so many different sectors. If it doesn't start
being reined in,
I'll give you an example. If you have two football teams and they're playing against each other on the field, one of them is cheating and the other one's not, that's a problem, because you're just gonna get your tail handed to you. Let's say you better start cheating, just like they do, in order to show, if nothing else, why you shouldn't. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I don't like it. I'm telling you, I don't like this. I don't like where this kind of mindset is going. But we have been going this mindset, at least with another political faction, for quite some time. And this is the corrective force, and it's going to happen. And it's unfortunate. And we'll get into a story connecting to this that is more overt, more direct. But before we do that, I thought this was kind of cool. It's just to kind of close this topic out for now, because the board meeting is coming up.
Yes.
Former Disney CEO privately complained to DeSantis about pressure from woke left amid Florida fight. Book. Okay. He did not want Disney to get involved, but he was getting a lot of pressure to weigh in against the bill. So I guess DeSantis did put out a book here talking about Chapek, and how, I guess he details that he's been talking about Chapek for a while. And it says right here, quote, "As the controversy over the parental rights and education bill was coming to a head, Chapek called me. He did not want Disney to get involved, but he was getting a lot of pressure to weigh in against the bill," DeSantis writes. Quote, "We get pressured all the time," Chapek told DeSantis, according to the governor's book. Quote, "But this time it's different. I haven't seen anything like this before."
Well, and Chapek is right about that, because we had conversations both on camera and on the phone where we're talking is like, is Chapek going to survive this? Like his career, can it survive? Is he going to get ousted?
Yep.
And see, this is the thing that's surprising to me too. So DeSantis was getting calls from the head of Disney. The head of Disney is telling him on the phone directly, "I don't want to do this." So it feels like a little bit of an overreaction then, almost. The whole thing does, because DeSantis knew the whole time that the CEO is not wanting to do this. He's being coerced into it, basically. So was there any real fear from DeSantis' side that there was going to be any real movement in repealing this bill when the CEO isn't even really on board? I don't know. I feel like it feels like
it's an interesting idea. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think DeSantis, at first wasn't really, I don't think he was really concerned up until the point they put this press release out. And then he's getting pressure because of that from his constituents to do something about it.
Right.
So that's kind of the thing that's,
so these comments were before the statement, from what we understand.
Believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. I'll have to take a look at the book though and kind of find that out. I mean, look, was there something to gain politically here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And look, I've been very critical on DeSantis with this Reedy Creek thing, but on a strategy side, from his perspective,
Smart.
it was a smart play.
Yeah.
It was absolutely a smart play. So whether I agree with the decision or not, he played the game really well.
And there were people, I mean, Legal Mindset actually talks about it because he worked in this space for quite some time, arranging and setting up special districts for a number of actual theme park entities. And they asked him, they said, hey, can we set up an RCID of our own? He's like, no. But he did go to some political leaders, people in Tallahassee, talking about the prospect of it. And they're like, okay, what is the RCID? What can they do? They didn't even know about it. And then when they looked into it, it's like, no, there's no way, not a chance we're doing this again. In fact, they shouldn't have to begin with. So, you know, the state, even back in 1967, when they signed the thing, it's challenged in court in 1968, literally. So I think Florida politicians and even Florida constituents have always had kind of a problem with this. And when, you know, DeSantis could benefit politically off of it, I think he took that opportunity. But I still contend, let's take the players out of it. Even Disney, just take them all out of it. Are we really comfortable with the corporation having this much power in a state? Just principally, I don't think so. Yeah. And that probably needed to change. It's unfortunate who the players were and the actors and how it all happened, how it all transpired. But I think it was inevitable, as Thanos would say.
Yes. You know, we got to get that drop action. I might have to add that to the Roadcaster.
There you go. I am inevitable. Yeah, I like that. Okay. That sounds good. I will say though, at least for initially, before the Reedy Creek Improvement District was actually transformed, let's say, into the Central Florida Oversight Tourism District. There you go. Finally remembered it. They did pass a whole bunch of kind of long-range master plan. What do you want to say? Amendments to the RCID plan that included more hotels, 2 additional minor parks, could be water parks, 1 major park, and so forth. And they just crammed them in. They just, they fast-tracked all this. The board rubber stamped it, right? Just to try to get this on the books right here. Could this board have a retroactive effect in terms of amending even these amendments?
Hey.
Possibly. Constitutionally, you can't saddle an incoming administration to whatever the previous one does. That's just constitutionally can't happen. Along, whether any government setup, you're not bound to those things. So they could possibly amend these. I just don't think they will.
And this was a smart move by Disney, or because you really want to look. It's the unknown. We're going into unknown territory here with this new board, right? You don't know what they're gonna do, what they're gonna approve, not approve. So it's good to kind of get everything like your, like as Palpatine would say, your contingency plan, right? You really want to have that in order before the new boss comes in. I think any competent company would have done this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I know. And it's smart move. Should be done. If you're gonna lose control of the board, you might as well do what you can with the board you have, and they did. We'll have to see what comes of this, because I'm telling you, folks, the story is not over. As DeSantis has said, there is a new sheriff in town.
Buckle up.
We can only assume they're going to want to make a big splash, so buckle up for sure.
One thing though, real quick before we move on, I am disappointed in DeSantis over.
Mm-hmm.
He said buckle up, but he never said pull on the yellow safety strap. Come on, DeSantis. Missed opportunity, man.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this
Fantastic. Show. I love it. Pull on the yellow safety strap. Oh, Come on. Would have been great for the branding.
Okay. It would have.
Very funny. But so we've talked about how we're uncomfortable with government getting involved in the actions of a corporation, especially an entertainment corporation that produces content. Well, it's funny because I saw all these articles talking about how DeSantis was threatening to do such things, which, as we've gone over, alluded to it, maybe not overtly threatened it, right? And again, it would be limited to the governing body of this oversight district. Well, here's some legislation that is actually being forwarded in the California legislature, talking about, well, here we go. California proposes withholding new tax credits from Hollywood productions unless they, quote, set ethnic, racial, and gender diversity goals and to develop a plan to achieve them. Now, if you are uncomfortable with a figure like Ron DeSantis potentially controlling content from Disney,
right?
I would expect you to be right.
Yeah.
I expect you to be as outraged of this, right? Because they're not just talking Disney; they're talking about all of Hollywood. And they're not talking about, oh, well, maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't do it. No, this is legislation. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go over this just real fast. In 2022, California voted to pass SB 485, which revised the state's film tax credits legislation to introduce a new credit, which could be only received if a given project provided, quote, a diversity work plan that includes goals that are broadly reflective of California's population. And it goes into the census data. Under the bill, an appointed commission would be prohibited from, quote, certifying the tax credit for an applicant until the commission receives the applicant's final diversity report. Additionally, said commission would be authorized, quote, to increase the applicant's credit percentage if the commission determines that the applicant has met or made a good faith effort to meet the diversity goals in its diversity work plan. And then it goes on it goes over kind of the intricacies of this bill right here. But for the same reasons that I'm against, California just passed legislation saying that you had to have a certain quota when it came to the board of your company if it's headquartered in California. I'm against that because only the company should be able to determine who runs it, not some, government entity. But now they're talking about actually
incentivizing, real tangible, like we're going to give you a tax credit or break whatever if you do this, that, and the other. And it's so unnecessary because these are very progressive, like Hollywood types running these studios. You have to coerce them into diversity. I just feel like it's just so unnecessary. Like they're going to do it on their own anyway. Like, why are you doing this?
That's an interesting thing. Or, maybe does this impact, a certain themes that you include in films, for example? How far or wide reaching is this? And if they're already thinking this way, what more could be impacted? And look, you could take this the other way too. Look, what if Georgia, who Disney does a lot of business in, I know Bob Iger may have made comments about, well, it's going to be hard to do business in Georgia because of this and this and that. They still do business in Georgia, so it wasn't that hard. But what if Georgia just said, hey, you know what? You have to have, let's just say you have to have pro-life themes in your movies.
Right.
In order to receive the tax credits in which we give you from doing business here. Now, Disney has, I believe, studios in Georgia right now, right? They have a presence there.
A lot of the Marvel stuff is filmed in Georgia. I believe a lot of the Disney Channel stuff too is filmed out there in Georgia. They have a significant presence in Georgia.
Sure. And what if Georgia did that? Do we really want to be living in that world, people? No. I mean, this is...
And that's why people have to get, people are so like, when it comes to like this political stuff, they're so team minded, team red, team blue. And it's, oh, well, my side's doing it, so it's okay. It's not okay. Even if you don't like the other side, right?
Yeah.
If they're overreaching, you should be pissed off because that sets the stage. Like, even if you support them, that sets the stage for the team that you don't like to do it too, right? So you want to call out your own side. If they're overreaching, you want to call them out because that can spread into other stuff that you might not be supportive of. And you go down this road and this is what happens. This is exactly what happens. Now you have California basically determining what kind of content you're creating. And it's not about like diversity is a beautiful thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when government's involved and they're over your shoulder saying, well, we need this many, like where they're giving you quotas and dangling a tax credit over your head or whatever, it just seems very, very slimy to me. It really does.
It's a little bit Soviet Union-ish. You know what I'm saying? It's a little overreach, a little overbearing. And it's even though you might be supportive of some of these things now under the guidelines as they currently exist, eventually they're going to come up on something that maybe you're not supportive of.
Right.
And with those incentivizations in place and so forth, that might not be necessarily a good thing. So again, got to call it out on both sides. We did. Not a lot of people will, but again, these are decisions that will probably affect Disney.
Yeah, no, you have to call it out on both sides. Like, so progressives, if you're, you're probably in support of more diversity in film, right? And that's great, right?
Yeah,
I don't think
fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But you have to look at this legislation and go, okay, well, the people you disagree with in Republican states can make similar legislation.
They can.
Like,
and now
like you said.
Now they might be motivated to do so.
Right. So that's why you have to call it out on your own side whenever you see it, because it can dip into other areas and you might not support it when the next guy does it. And it's very, very important. So it's fascinating. And we'll see how that shapes up.
Speaking of influence, we're gonna go ahead and we have the topics all listed up, but I kind of want to get into this now, so we'll jump around a little bit. An interesting story just made the Wall Street Journal. And it says this, quote, Vanguard's CEO bucks the ESG orthodoxy. Tim Buckley pulls out of the Net Zero Managers Initiative and affirms his fiduciary duty to clients. So this is very interesting. I originally heard this out to be, Vanguard CEO has withdrawn his firm from the $59 trillion ESG investment alliance. He stated that Vanguard is, quote, not in the game of politics, which is actually reflected in this Financial Times article right here. Let's see, where is... Yeah, exactly. Buckley. However, Vanguard was not in the game of politics. Our research indicates that ESG investing indicates that does not have an advantage over broad-based investing. So this is very interesting. It says it right here, quote, our research indicates that ESG investing does not have any advantage over broad-based investing, Mr. Buckley said in a recent interview with the Financial Times. Matching word to deed, his comments came after he had withdrawn his firm from the $59 trillion Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, an organization that is part of the $150 trillion United Nations affiliated Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Both alliances are committed to restricting their investments over time to companies that are compliant with the Paris Agreement's objective of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Buckley claims the financial world, swept up in climate change fervor, can't make such commitments without reneging on its fiduciary duties. This is significant right here. And if this is all kind of going over people's head, let me just break it down for you. Okay. Vanguard, this is why it's relevant to Disney. I'm not, again, this is a political show or politically leaning show. I don't like to dip into stuff like this because, I like to talk about parks. I like to talk about attractions and so forth. But you have to understand that some of these things, they just don't happen in a bubble. These things do impact the company and they will affect the parks product even then. Vanguard, if you don't know who they are they're the largest institutional investor in Disney right now. Okay. When it comes to financial firms, they own 7.6%. Okay. We're talking about, what is that, $15 billion worth of shares into the Walt Disney Company. And the reason that matters is because I understand they don't have any voting power with those shares. BlackRock actually does, which we'll get into in a moment. They own 4.2% or $8 billion worth of shares. Okay. But they own those board seats. Okay. The board seats that exist as part of the Walt Disney Company today, a lot of them have been selected by Vanguard. and by BlackRock. And this is why I keep telling people who runs the Walt Disney Company. Some people say it's the board, some people say it's the CEO. But is it these investment firms who are saying, hey, look, if you want to have your stock folded into our 401k programs and so forth, you got to do this. This has been happening with corporations, including Disney, for over a decade, if not longer. And it has been impacting decisions made at Disney. Okay. We ask, why is this kind of politicization happening across these companies? Why are they getting away from 4-quadrant content and getting head first into this kind of activist-minded content? One of the big reasons is because of this. Is because Vanguard, BlackRock, and Blackstone, and some of these other investment firms have kind of gone along with this ESG scoring system and have scored companies on their alignment towards ESG, and will fold in their ROAs or their investment packages according to how aligned you are in that regard. And they do it like, hey, how diverse are your commercials? How diverse is the content you produce? What's your advertising like? And it's all these kind of little things. And if you're a company who's looking to get maximum shareholder value and get your stock price pumped up, you could see why that would be an attractive offer. And for Bob Iger, who himself wanted to be a more politically sought after figure, well, hey, if they're going to subsidize a more kind of progressive attitude, well, that's all the more reason to go down this road. And it some of these decisions have been subsidized by these investment firms. That's why they weren't worried about the losses, because they know they'd get it on the back end.
Yeah, no, 100%. So them pulling out is a signal, a huge shift that
massive
times are changing.
Massive
times are changing. The Walt Disney Company isn't as beholden.
Yes.
To that.
Yes. As big as you think some other stories are, and we just did a whole 48 minutes, I think, on the RCID and on on the district and stuff. This is the biggest story as it relates to Disney right here. This is showing that this strategy is simply not working. That this stuff does not sell. And he even said we'd have to renege on our fiduciary duties if we were going to go this route. Now, it's aligned with more climate activism, but that's a broad statement across the line here. And we've already seen, interestingly enough, that this has been affecting some other entities. For example, this is Zero Hedge. People have problems with it. I get it. They're one of the only guys talking about this, so this is why I bring this up. Okay, I'm sorry. I do apologize. I normally wouldn't do this, right? But I got to give you a source of some kind. Blackstone defaults on $562 million CMBS as it keeps blocking investor withdrawals from $71 billion REIT. They're having cash flow issues. Larry Fink of, I believe, BlackRock has said, woke within reason, right? And they're having massive layoffs in this sector. I'll read you. You go ahead and take it off my screen there, OG. I wanted to go ahead and read you some comments here on what Cameron Pasha has been saying about all this. He says, quote, woke capital investor Blackstone defaults. This is
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. No problem. Woke capital investor Blackstone defaults. Rising interest rates have proven to be the Achilles heel for the once seemingly invincible investment firm Blackstone, which has defaulted on a $562 million bond. Bloomberg reports that Wall Street's largest commercial real estate landlord, private equity giant Blackstone, has defaulted on a €531 million or $562 million bond backed by a portfolio of offices and stores owned by Sponda Oy, a Finnish landlord it acquired in 2018. While the PE firm had sought an extension from holders of the scrutinized notes to allow time to dispose of assets and repay the debt. The surge in market volatility triggered by the war in Ukraine and rising interest rates interrupted the sales process, and bondholders voted against the further extension, the Bloomberg sources said. The new crisis comes on top of news that Blackstone's $71 billion BREIT fund is collapsing as investors try to flee, but the company is limiting redemptions, preventing unhappy shareholders from cashing out. A few months ago, BlackRock announced that it was laying off 500 employees. That's BlackRock, separate from Blackstone. The investment fund has been notorious about using its powers to force companies to adopt DEI initiatives and other, he says, woke programs, even though they damage the productivity and value of those companies BlackRock controlled. Larry Fink, BlackRock's chairman and CEO, has been quite open about his intention to use other people's money to change the world according to his progressive vision. That was the New York Post article I linked before. Investors might have been willing to tolerate that when BlackRock was bringing in outsized returns, but the very changes that Mr. Fink implemented have destroyed the underlying portfolios the fund manages. There is little appetite for its, quote, save the global village by destroying it paradigm. The rapid fall of BlackRock, Blackstone, and others means that the biggest pressure on Hollywood to adopt unsuccessful woke programs is ending. Now that the industry will go back to doing what it does best, making empty speeches and virtue signaling about progressive causes while quietly doing the opposite in order to make money. This is big news. This is
Huge.
This, again, this is stuff I don't like talking about. This is stuff I don't like bringing up, but I think it's very, very appropriate that we do, because it definitely does impact the direction of Disney, what content they produce, and what decisions they actually ultimately make.
We talk a lot on the channel about the pendulum is swinging. Look, there is a lot of really like politically driven content you're seeing from Disney right now. We get it, but the thing is that the content we're seeing today is a product of 3 and 4 years ago. These movies are not made overnight. So
Sure.
if you see a Proud Family thing, that was in the works for years. Yeah. It's just getting released now. Strange World or whatever anyone has a problem with today, that's years ago. That was written and produced and the whole thing. But the pendulum is swinging now. You have these big investment groups now saying that this sort of stuff doesn't sell anymore. Okay. They're not going to completely abandon diversity or anything like that, but this really overtly charged kind of activism in the content or that's coming to an end. That's absolutely coming to an end. This is a
family stuff, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
In 5 years from now, you're not going to see much of that. I'm telling you, I'm telling everyone right now, in 5-6 years from now, you won't see much of that anymore. These big investment firms are saying, we're done with this. We're done with this. You got to start making money, right?
Well,
you got to start making money.
Look, Iger is very connected to this world as well.
Right.
When he says a changing landscape, this is what he's talking about, folks.
Yes.
This is what he's talking about right here. He's talking, look, this stuff is not selling, and we need to make money, first of all. Us as Disney, right? The stock price isn't necessarily in a great way, and the content that we're producing is not as
well received.
Viable, right, as some of our other mainstay brands here. And that's why he's saying accountability. You got to make money. We got to make money off this stuff. And that's why he's, I think, pushing stuff like Avatar. That's a cross-generational, cross-culture brand.
It's old school Hollywood. Avatar is old school Hollywood. You can put Avatar next to the old school Indiana Jones movies or old school Star Wars or anything like that, where it was like just kind of like everyone can walk in the theater and everyone can kind of get that enjoyment. It's not just aimed at one group of the population, It's a broad spectrum kind of thing, where we see lately the trend has been, that film isn't made for you. Well, it's like, why not? Everything should be like, you as a filmmaker or as a studio, you should want your film and your product to be made for everybody. You should want everyone to see this stuff that you're creating to give it the best chance to be a financial success. So Avatar is a great example of that, where it appeals to everybody. It's not a divisive sort of product. I think Disney's going to get more into that. I really do.
Yeah, and the sad thing about it is that Disney used to specialize in that. They used to do that better than anybody else did. And to see them, I mean, that comment about this film wasn't made for you by our our favorite.
Thank you very much.
That was about a Disney film.
Wrinkle in Time. Wrinkle in Time.
I'm just saying. It's just, and we talked about the financials of it all the time. If you're going to budget a film, for $200 million, it better make $1 billion. It better be a hit, not only in this country but in others. Not only with certain particular demographics, but amongst the broadest demographics you can possibly have. It better do that, or else it's just not going to make money. But now, the losses that you could potentially incur and be fine with, and you had those kind of safeguards from Vanguard, right? From BlackRock, from Blackstone, ain't going to be there anymore.
Right. And
So
that's
the
going to
paradigm
affect.
yeah, go ahead.
No, you're right. It's changing, and that's going to affect the content in a huge way. And like I said before, everyone needs to have patience, because this is not going to be an overnight thing. Even if they decide today, okay, no more, it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years to see the product of that. They're just planting the seeds now. It's going to take a while for us to see, what that grows into. So,
Yes, exactly. I think that's going to be a very kind of interesting thing to watch. And I'm telling you, folks, I mean, when you have an entity like on the level of Vanguard who owns 7%, I mean, I think BlackRock and Vanguard combined, they own 12% of the company. When you have those big firms pull out of stuff like that,
it's
big
huge.
deal. And when they're telling you that it's not viable, keep watching this. Keep watching this space. This is let's just say this is the luxury that JPEG never really had. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to go ahead and bring this up here. We talked about this Daily Mail article, right? This kind of bias training. Amazon, Applebee's, Twitter. You remember this video, right? We showed the graphs and how they're removing, let's say, DEI positions, right? And I believe Town Hall has an article going over it and so forth. And they mentioned a lot of the stuff that the Daily Mail article did. Well, it's interesting because right after we put that out, well, guess who followed in Applebee's and Amazon.com's footsteps? Maybe potentially Disney themselves. So I want to go ahead and read this also from Cameron Pasha. Here you go. Quote, scoop from Disney Insider. Woke employees being laid off first. So remember, Bob Iger announced 7,000 jobs were going to be exiting the company.
Right.
Those might have included some very well-paid DEI positions.
And this is cover too for Iger, because Iger is seen as a progressive, and
True.
Democrats love him, and Hollywood loves him. Well, hey, look, now he's got cover to lay a lot of these people off, because hey, you know what, we're going through it right now as a company. The layoffs have to happen. I don't want to do it, but I kind of have to, kind of thing. So, but go on. I do apologize here.
No, you're fine. No, that's perfect. I mean, that's kind of that deals directly in what we're going to be saying here. It says this: Disney layoffs have begun, and you'll find this very interesting. First, affected departments: recruiting, talent acquisition, and diversity and inclusion. Didn't we discuss that the Chapek regime was starting to prepare the field for layoffs in HR? It's also very telling that they are firing people over at DEI. It almost tells itself. This basically is an admission of how bad the, quote, woke infection is. Again, this is Cameron Pasha's words, okay? Everyone thought they were going to start over at DMED to trim the payroll according to the new structure, quote, set by Iger. But they're starting at HR and diversity and inclusion first. It's so telling that one of the people who have been laid off, I'm not happy whenever people lose their jobs, but says that her priority is diversity, gosh, end quote. Our insider shared several LinkedIn posts of former colleagues from the DEI divisions announcing their termination. And he has the LinkedIn posts as part of his Patreon account.
There we go.
I'm trying to... We've tried to paint a picture here with the show. That the pendulum is changing, and it's changing fast.
It's changing. Moves are happening. And look, Pasha mentions in there, this is sort of like, it was sort of started or birthed with Bob Chapek. Now, a lot of people were assuming that once Bob Iger got in there, These kind of initiatives started by Chapek to sort of depoliticize the Walt Disney Company would sort of fall to the wayside. They see Bob Iger as a very much a politically charged figure. It might surprise a lot of people how that's not happening. I mean, in fact, not only is he doing it, but it's seemingly a priority for him because, like Pasha said, this is the division they're starting off with, the lab. Like, it's not the DMED. It's this DEI division. That's telling. Coming from Bob Iger, no one expected that. No one expected that. We were thinking that these divisions would be largely safe under a Bob Iger. Not the case.
Not the case at all. And I mean, even we predicted when Iger came back, hey, if you're wanting, woke to stop, that's a different thing. But we talk about the streaming wars, right? And how the goal was for subscriber at all cost. Then the economics changed.
Right.
And then Wall Street was like, wait a minute. Are we ever going to hit profitability here? And then when Netflix started losing subscribers, even with all that pouring of capital investment, well, that changed the paradigm. That changed the game right there. I think similarly, Iger, I think he's been thrust into a situation where the economic factors relating to progressivism in content, I think has changed as well.
Yeah, and it goes to show you whether it's both sides, left or right, when they tell you, oh, well, Disney, when the left says, oh, Disney's progressive and, they whatever, they're really at the core. They're really, in my opinion, this is my opinion, but in my opinion, I don't think they're progressive. I think they're progressive when they think it can make them money because we've seen them flip on a dime when it comes to marketing stuff in China. They're certainly not progressive in China.
No.
So this isn't like a core value that they hold. They're not, the Walt Disney Company isn't like their core value. They don't have like a value system where they're like, oh, we're progressive. They're really not, because they throw all those values out the window the minute China or another country that they need to sell a film in out the window when they market over there. So you can see how fast they flip on a dime when they have to. They are purely driven by profits. And the reason why we've seen a lot of this kind of woke stuff, I think, in the States is because for a long time, I think, well, the investment firms, right? But also I think that there was this kind of idea for a long time that this is what sells. And lately, it hasn't been panning out for them. So guess what? We're going to drop it like a hot potato and go in the other direction. And I think a big part of that too, I got to be honest, this is a big movie, Top Gun Maverick. I think Top Gun Maverick did a lot of eye-opening in the industry.
It did. And there's this beautiful video of Steven Spielberg kind of hugging and congratulating Tom Cruise at some premiere or something, some Hollywood event.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you may have just saved theatrical. The industry saw that as a big deal, but I think the other lesson to take from that was not just the viability of theatrical pictures, but also the kind of themes that could be incorporated in those, the kind of stories that you could actually play, the kind of the, let's say, old school storytelling, let's say, was still a very viable prospect, and really it kind of filled a hole that was there, quite frankly.
Yeah, you see Top Gun Maverick, which was a phenomenal movie. It got me back in the theaters of all people. I'm not even a theater person. I went back to the theater to see Maverick, and I absolutely loved it. Mm-hmm. And Avatar is another one we talked about earlier, which is kind of a Maverick kind of film. These are kind of old school. Everyone can enjoy it. There's not anything divisive about either film. That's what we have to get back into, and I think that's what we're going to get back to. I do think that these two films are kind of like the roadmap for the future. And look, people like Bob Iger, they're not stupid. He knows what sells. And I think he has cover now to sort of make the right decision and pivot. Now, look, if times were really good and the economy was booming and the layoffs weren't a thing, he'd have a harder time doing it. How are you going to lay off the DEI folks, right? When there's like no economic storm, right?
Yeah, because they'll sue you.
They'll sue you, and it looks real bad optics to the Hollywood community, what have you. But he's got the cover now. So I think he's going to go all in on it. Another thing that I got to give credit to Steph Janasek, who she does great content. And she's a fun lady, but she was talking about how, this work in the office 4 days a week, I think it is, thing that Bob Iger is mandating.
Yeah.
It's not the conservatives or maybe even the moderates who are fighting that. It would be more progressives who want to stay home and work from home. It's just a fact. That's just more left-leaning people are against that than maybe moderate or right-leaning. Well, with that work from home mandate, that's going to purge a lot of people that are politically left.
It is.
So that's going to factor into who's in the company making decisions as well. So times are definitely changing. I'm telling you, keep an eye on the content. In the next few years, you're going to see a shift. But in the meantime, it's going to be business as usual in terms of what kind of content you see. Because again, I've said it many times, I just want to, it bears repeating, the content today is a product of 2019, 2018, 2020.
It is.
It takes years to make these films and even shows, So.
It does. And so it's going to be interesting to see what content is produced over the coming years and see how well that does, as opposed to maybe a content change and so forth. When that accountability, as Bob Iger has reiterated time and time again in interviews, when that actually starts, what decisions might be made maybe under his watch or somebody else's. It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch, but we just kind of wanted to show in this kind of whole video, I'm telling you, the times they are changing, and they're changing fast, and it's really kind of interesting to see it. And going forward, I don't know if we'll see many Splash Mountain type stories. Let's say
I don't think we will. I really don't think we will. And I think that those days are over. They really are. Now, the diversity stuff, I think, will continue. I think, look, even under Michael Eisner, we saw that. He in the 90s, he started to get into a little bit more, cultural film, with their animated films, right? Like Mulan, Pocahontas. This has been a thing that Disney has been sort of doing for a while. I mean, even to be honest, even Walt Disney in the 40s with Saludos Amigos and the Three Caballeros. I mean, Disney's always, despite what the narrative is out there, Disney has always been a pretty diverse organization with the content that they released. Like I said, in the 40s, releasing films like Three Caballeros and all that. I mean, they've always been pretty diverse in what content they create. And I think we'll continue to see that. But this politically overt stuff, right? Coming out against bills and saying we're going to fight the bill and even like that Proud Family stuff, those days are over. Those days are over.
I think they are. I think they are.
They're gone.
I think so. I think because it's the viability of that product is just not there.
It's not there.
And honestly, it hasn't really been there for a while, right? You did have some hits. I'm not saying that you didn't on some things, but like even in the context of like Black Panther, for example, like there was some stuff that was like, do you have to call the white people colonizer and stuff like that, right?
Right.
But for the most part, even though it included diversity, I didn't really see that as kind of an activist-driven film. You know what I'm saying?
Not at all. Yeah, no, absolutely. It wasn't.
I was okay. But then when you started doing that, that's when things started going a little bit awry there. And it's I am glad that there are at least some that are realizing that and saying, we really have to be more inclusive, not just for the people that we want to include, but for a wider audience that maybe we didn't include before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dre, I want to thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, Dre, for all the work you put into this particular video. Like you did the work, brother. Like everyone at home, you have no idea. Really, I appreciate your time and everything you put into this. It means a lot, dude. It absolutely means a lot.
I'm glad. I tried to, I don't like I said, I don't like doing shows like this, but but these things I think are important to discuss. You know, from other channels. You know, I don't want to mention names, but other channels, they'll just give you the new churro flavors, right? And that's great. That's awesome. You know, I like to see the new churros, right? But
pretty good.
I've had conversations though. Gee, that's not quite the content that we want to produce. We want to provide you a kind of just lifting of the veil, going behind the curtain a little bit, and see really how these things are made and what really goes into that. And sometimes, you know, it's just within the Mouse House and they're making decisions internally, and sometimes it affects, you know, it's affected by other things. Yeah. And so this is part of that story. And I feel that there would be a hole if we didn't actually tell this part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, brother. If you let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Yes, best place to find me is going to be at Vashguy right there. Don't beat me up too bad over this video, please. I try to be as non-partisan as possible. But hey, if you want to go ahead.
If we get canceled, we get canceled together. We're going down with the ship, Dre.
We are.
All good, man.
We are. Okay. Well, good. Well, if you want to participate in that, I guess, or if you want to, contribute to, as Christine Waysense McCarthy would say,
robust
discussion right there, you can go ahead and do so. Just type that in. And if you want to see me, well, you got to subscribe to the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55. We have some amazing shows like Orange Grove 55 and Orange Nerd, hosted by, well, the person to my left. There you go. I think I got that. Citrus Corner with our buddy George, or Disney Family Man 23, who's
George.
Just goes into everything Walt Disney World. Newcomer to the channel, Story Geeks with Jay, talking about all things, movies and the stories that impact our lives. In fact, we actually have a pretty cool show in the works just for that, coming out very, very shortly. And my own, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice and news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So, if you like the content you like that you saw right now, make sure to hit that like button right there. Hit that subscribe button. Hey, if you want to get alerted, hit the bell icon for notifications. And comment below and tell us kind of what you think about all this. Let's keep it civil, guys. We don't necessarily say, what sides anybody's on or call people out or whatever. But I think this is a very interesting couple of stories that could really impact the future of the company, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It absolutely will impact the company. Yeah, comment down below civilly. Let's talk about it. A lot of stuff here. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.